All right, and hello everybody. So today we're trying something a little bit different. We are using our brand new DJI Action 5 with the DJI Mic 2 microphones. So Shashank is done traveling for now, although I may be doing a little bit of traveling going forward. So we're still trying to work out this whole kind of setup. So we're experimenting. Typically we use, what is the microphone that you normally use?
I have a big Yeti blue microphone with a boom arm that comes out and it picks up a lot of sound very clearly, and it's about the size of two fists.
Yeah. So it's a fairly large microphone. So I think that in the near-ish future, both myself and Shashank may be doing some traveling. So we're trying to figure out what sort of setup that we can use in terms of microphones. So we heard you guys last time. Last time the audio was not too great. This time we hope it's better. So we'll see. And if we're lucky, I'm not gonna promise anything, we might post this video. So if you watch us, you'll see us sitting on a couch at Shashank's place. So it's a riveting video. You could watch us. We were thinking about editing it and slicing in what we're talking about, but we think that'll probably be too much work. So we'll just describe it visually for all the audio listeners out there. But yeah, that's that. And apologize also for us not posting for the last few weeks. Holidays, we've been busy, lots of things. But that means that there's lots of news queued up. So lots of things to talk about. I was really excited.
Yeah, honestly, I was dying to do a video, but I've been traveling. I was in Australia, I was in India, and backpacking, hopping from one place to another. But it's been an exciting couple weeks. You know, OpenAI has given us a lot of Christmas presents, and I think Google had to one-up them and show what they have. Not to mention all the other companies that have come out. It's a really exciting time. So something that I was super excited about was the progress in the video generation models. So I think we got OpenAI's Sora demoed to us, what was it, like about a year ago? And it was a closed source demo, and it wasn't available to the general public. They made it available to a handful of creators, and they kind of cherry-picked some of the examples. And the examples looked really cool. It was a paradigm shift because the only thing that we had before then was image generation, which was cool.
And also at that time, image generation models were fairly new. Because I think that DALL-E came out, like the DALL-E 2 model, which was kind of the first popular image generation model that came out maybe, what was it, 2 years ago now, roughly? 2.5 years ago?
Yeah.
And then I think Sora was announced maybe a year ago. So
Sure.
image models had only been out for maybe a year at that time.
Agreed. I completely agree with you. But I think we kind of forget that a year is a lot of time in this space. A lot can happen in a year.
For sure.
A lot happened in just these last 2 weeks that we weren't recording a podcast. But I think the state of the world was we had a couple smaller companies, Midjourney in particular that comes to mind, that had amazing, phenomenal image generation models. And OpenAI was kind of lagging behind with DALL-E 3 in terms of image generation, in terms of like getting the number of fingers right, getting like the polish in the quality of the image. But then Sora came out and boom, it was like a little bit better than the stills from their Sora video generation model were better than the images generated by DALL-E 3, which was like super weird. But it was a gigantic leap. Not that it was perfect. It had a lot of issues. Just as the image generation models hallucinated some extra fingers, this was hallucinating all sorts of things. Like it didn't fully get the limbs right when there was occlusion. So if one arm is moving in front of the other arm might just like spontaneously disappear. If I walk in front of you, there might be two marks that just like burst into the frame. So there were some issues, but exciting time.
Yeah, for sure. But now last podcast, I think I called Sora vaporware. Well, it is vaporware. I know. I think maybe the folks at OpenAI were listening. They were saying like, all right, Mark's calling it vaporware. Let's just get this thing released because, they're starting to doubt us. But I think it was actually a day or two after that podcast aired.
Not too long before that, yeah.
Yeah, the Sora got actually released. So it's there now in beta. And Shashank, I think you have access to it, right?
Let me take a look. I was trying to generate a video that we were going to test out to compare something that Mark tested with Pika Labs too.
Yeah, so now it seems like I'm aware of 3 big names in the image, or not the image, but the video generation space. It's Google with their VO2 model, OpenAI with their Sora model, and then Pika Labs?
Yeah.
They have their Pika 2 model. So not to be confused with Pikachu, but Pika 2.
That might have been intentional.
It might have been, yeah.
Continue.
Okay, so anyways, yeah, so now the VO model is actually pretty exciting. Now, none of us have access to it, so we can't actually compare, but we tried to do a single prompt. So the prompt that we tried to do was a man hiking Mount Fuji. And if we would love to, show you the edit of this in the video, maybe we'll do that, but don't count on it, but we'll just describe it to you. So the first one I tried to do was with the Pika 2 model. Now, the Pika 2 model, one thing to note is it took forever. So I put in the prompt and I waited like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a few hours. I think I checked the next day and it was still generating. And then now I think like a couple weeks later, I just actually checked again because I just thought it would never generate. I saw that the prompt actually went through. So I have no idea how long it actually took, but it took a while to generate the image. So what happened was it generated a video, or actually I did 2. I just said a man hiking Mount Fuji and then a Japanese man climbing Mount Fuji. And it shows a man with walking kind of weirdly. He looks like he has some sort of like limp in his leg. I don't know, like his leg sort of like gets shorter as he's walking. And he's not actually technically climbing Mount Fuji, but Mount Fuji is there. He's climbing, Mount Fuji is off in the distance, but he's not technically on the mountain. But I think we'll give that a pass, right? But in my mind, if you're actually climbing Mount Fuji, you wouldn't actually see Mount Fuji. You would just see kind of what Mount Fuji looked like. But I think that's okay. And he's walking down the hill kind of toward Mount Fuji. I think it looks pretty decent. Do you see any other like major artifacts in that other than the way he walks, which looks a little bit weird? The physics don't look quite right on that.
Yeah, he looks like he has a limp, but apart from that, it looks pretty good.
Yeah, and I would say that the overall quality of the image looks quite beautiful. I would say, like, if you took a still from the video, every single still would look like a really solid image, in my opinion. But yeah, it's like a guy with Mount Fuji in the background. And then I did one more, and then this one's a little bit worse, I would say. So it has and this prompt was a Japanese man climbing Mount Fuji, and it shows a man in front of Mount Fuji, so similar as before, but then he is staring as if he was taking a picture, so he's looking away from the mountain, and then you see the man kind of turn around, going closer to Mount Fuji, but then he has a backpack, and it's a red backpack, and the backpack kind of merges with his body, and then as he turns around, and then it kind of like swings around his body as it merges through it, and then it kind of looks normal as he's walking. So
yeah, I think there's a moment where the backpack is kind of shifting angles and perspective because he's turning around, and I think the model tries to correct itself and tries to put the backpack in the right place, and in between when that's happening, there's a bit of weird artifact happening.
Yeah, it kind of merges with his body. And since we're recording this, I'm gonna just put the computer monitor up so you can maybe see it. It's probably not the best thing, but yeah, you can see, if you look at that, see the backpack kind of merges in with the body right there. Anyways, that is that. All right, so, and then you also were able to generate something on Sora as well.
And for reference, this took a couple seconds. I generated 2 more examples as you were talking, and it generated it in a couple seconds. But to be fair, I think you were testing it out at the same time that Sora was experiencing a heavy load, and they shut down their portal because they wouldn't allow any new people to sign up to try the model, because just the sheer amount of interest that they were getting, and probably the amount of compute that this uses on the back end, I don't think they could handle it. But now maybe they've gotten more chips from Jensen, or maybe they've optimized it somehow to make it less strenuous on their systems. But yeah, this took a couple seconds, and maybe I can play it for you guys too. In comparison to the Pika model, I don't think there's anything I could pinpoint and say that there's something wrong with this video.
Actually, I would say that the Sora is better in my opinion, and for a couple of reasons.
It's more coherent, I agree.
Well, and also I think that actually looks more like Mount Fuji.
Yeah.
Because so I've hiked Mount Fuji when I was living in Japan, and it's in the Pika model. There's a lot of trees and stuff around, but around Mount Fuji, I don't think it's quite that lush. Mount Fuji is a volcanic mountain, so there's a lot of black rock as you're hiking, and that image of Sora looks a lot more like Mount Fuji actually looks like. Although it is still a little bit weird how Mount Fuji is still like way in the background.
Here, I have a different one for you.
So that one right there. So the other video that Shashank generated, it shows a man kind of on the mountain, but you don't actually see Mount Fuji in the background. And that one actually I think looks the most like you're hiking Mount Fuji. So it kind of, it looks like you're on Mount Fuji, kind of walking down sort of above the clouds, and you see lots of kind of volcanic, rocky terrain. And that I think actually looks the most like Mount Fuji, because when I was walking down Mount Fuji, it looked very similar to that, I would say.
So I think this is better at adhering to the prompt. This isn't creating any of the weird artifacts that I just talked about a couple minutes ago.
This is the Sora model seems to be beating the Pika model. But also, I'll be fair to the Sora team. I never actually paid for this. So Shashank is on the pro plan for OpenAI, so maybe he has slightly better compute. But
I think plus the pro is now a $200 subscription, which I'm not on.
Oh, okay. The $20 one.
Yes.
So, you know, we're not big ballers. We are mini ballers, and we have the $20 a month plan. Right. And I'm like a mini baller, and I just found the free one on Pika. So maybe that could explain why it took so long, because I'm just a freeloader trying to do it, and you actually put some money behind it. So I think they're a little bit more incentivized to do it faster.
That's possible. And we don't have access to this one yet, but the other big competitor is Google's VO2 model. So around the time that I think after OpenAI announced Sora last year, I think Google wanted to show that they also could do this, and they announced VO, which was at the time not very good. I don't think it was the image quality of the stills that you could see in the video were nearly as good. I don't think the like coherence, like the physics didn't make sense. The object permanence wasn't there. But fast forward, like a year later, and I think, and this seems to be a consensus online through most of the tech reviewers, the YouTubers, the Google's VO2 model is probably the best. It gets the physics right. If you take, let me actually, after we talk about this a little bit, try some prompts where OpenAI doesn't quite get it right, which is...
maybe gymnastics or something? Could you have somebody do parallel bars?
Well, the classic example was Will Smith eating spaghetti, but I know there's some copyright issues, so let me just try a man eating... Spaghetti. And
so this is the Sora model.
This is the Sora model. And I forget how to spell spaghetti, so Google's going to autocorrect me. Yeah, let me just try that. But yeah, in cases where there's a lot of objects moving in front and behind each other, where there's occlusions, where there's things, deformations, where there's like an object being cut in half, these models kind of freak out. And it's like if there's a rock exploding, it'll explode into like a bazillion pieces and generate new matter out of nowhere. Whereas the Google model seems fairly consistent in the physics of these things. If you're cutting a tomato, it'll make the rest of the tomato smaller as it's creating new slices, as opposed to the Sora model, which is just keeps creating more tomatoes out of thin air. So in this example, as I was talking, I just created 2 more videos of a man eating spaghetti, and
Whoa.
the same thing happens. There's like more spaghetti being created out of nowhere, and not just that. There's like a glass of wine that just erupts from the fork that is connected to the spaghetti that this man is lifting. So.
Yeah, so as in the video that Shashank just generated with Sora, as the man takes so in the scene, you see a man...
Here, why don't I present it to our audience, if they can see it?
Yeah, so if we end up putting this video up, you'll see what this looks like, but there is, for the audio listeners out there, there's a man sitting behind a bowl, and then he has the spaghetti, and then as he lifts up the spaghetti, his fork morphs into a wine glass, and then the video repeats. And then the other one looks a little bit better, because Shashank generated 2 images, and it showed the man picking up the spaghetti and putting it to his mouth, but the mouth, it looks kind of weird. Like, you don't see the guy's tongue. To me, it sort of looks like just a gaping hole that the spaghetti is going into. It doesn't completely look like a mouth.
But it's not all that bad. I think it's believable if you're not paying too much attention.
Sure.
There's no crazy phantom objects coming out of thin air. But I think what I take away from all of this is that the progress that we're making on video generation model is insane. I think these models are getting so good. The fact that we can create this, given that we didn't even have image generation like more than 5 years ago, is mind-boggling. And my take is that given how much data we needed to train these LLMs in the first place, they used all the text in the internet, they used some proprietary data that they had, they bought data from news sources. I think given that Google is sitting on one of the biggest sources of data with YouTube, I think that's why their model is way better than all these other competitors. I don't know if any of these other companies can get their hands on the scale of video that Google has access to.
Although, I don't know, I wonder if people are actually also training on YouTube's data, but maybe Google is just preventing them from scraping all those videos.
Yeah, I wonder.
Yeah, because I don't know where they would get all the videos from.
You can scrape YouTube data, yes. That's probably definitely against their terms of service. So I think if you're a large, well-funded company, and definitely if you're a public company, you don't want to be doing that.
For sure, yeah.
Pika Labs, I don't want to say anything bad about any companies, but I have no idea what a tiny startup is doing, where they're getting their data from. So you never know. But I don't think OpenAI is scraping YouTube videos. I think they might be paying YouTube or licensing some kind of
Could be, yeah.
content from some of these other companies. There's like Vimeo, there's a bunch of other content that, what is it? Other content creators make on different platforms. So
Yeah.
maybe they're getting it from somewhere else.
Yeah, you're probably right. I'm sure that we're not saying that OpenAI or any of these labs are doing anything illegal. We
Unlikely.
know nothing. Yes,
Unlikely.
it's likely they're doing everything completely legally. So
Everything that we say here is pure speculation.
yes, just to put that very clear. We're not accusing anybody of anything. But yes, for sure, Google has YouTube, and YouTube is a huge database of videos.
Massive.
So lots of stuff to train on, and they're just getting more and more every day. Even this might be used to train an AI model one day.
That's possible, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I mean, I give consent with the checkbox that I select because it's convenient to use YouTube.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. For example, I remember Marcus Brownlee, the YouTuber, the tech YouTuber, he was saying he tried to generate a video with Sora, and he said, what was it? Generate a tech YouTuber.
Yeah.
And then it didn't have him, but he has a particular plant, I think, on his desk, and then it generated the plant in the same plant that
exact
he
same
has.
plant,
Yeah.
yeah.
So definitely you could tell that like MKBHD's videos were being used to train, and then if you're going to make a tech YouTuber, it's going to somewhat resemble MKBHD.
Yeah, to be fair, he's one of the oldest tech, if not the oldest tech YouTube reviewer online.
Is he like 27? I don't know.
Maybe actually late 20s. But he started off when he was a teenager. He's been making videos for a long time. And YouTube probably has a lot of content that is mostly his and is getting millions of views. So maybe their ranking algorithm for what is a good data set and what is not also depends on views. So maybe that has something to do. But yeah, data is king. Another thing that I was thinking about, one of the other big announcements of the last few weeks has been the progress in agentic behavior. So I think a lot of people were excited about agents. Even when the first GPT 3.5 model came out, there were like open source projects, there was like baby AGI, and a couple other agentic models that were trying to stitch together multiple LLMs, have them just loop in on themselves and keep working to solve a larger problem in the hopes that this would be AGI. And I think we kind of have that now with OpenAI releasing first the O1 model and now the O3 model, which is phenomenal.
Yes,
You wanna talk a little bit
although
about
they
that?
haven't released the O3 model yet, right?
That's true. They
Yeah.
haven't released the O3 model, yes.
So all we see is benchmarks. But benchmarks are interesting, but it's not something we typically like to talk about because benchmarks aren't necessarily solving your particular use case, but they can be a useful way to compare the different models. So one sort of famous benchmark, which came out maybe it was a year ago or something that it came out.
Very recently.
Yeah, was called the ARC Prize. So the ARC Prize, think about if you guys have ever taken some of those IQ tests where you sometimes see like different, you're trying to spot like the pattern between numbers. It's like, okay, this implies this, and then this implies this, so what's the pattern here? So basically, this guy, Francois Chalet, I think I'm saying that right. He's a researcher at Google. He said, hey, this is a particular type of task that AI models aren't very good at. So the ARC Prize is essentially a closed data set of this type of IQ-like tasks where the idea is you don't need to know anything. It's not something you could specifically train on, but it's more about how well you are able to do pattern recognition. So one example might be is you have objects that are mirrored with each other, right? So maybe you'd have like an object where it looks like a smiley face, and then in the opposite one, it's like a frowny face, right? Because it maybe is mirrored on the other one, right? So then you might show a couple examples of objects mirrored, and then you would want to do one more output where the object is mirrored, but it's also precise because it's not like just a single mirrored object, but it's in a 2D grid. Kind of looks like a Sudoku type board or like graph paper. And then also there's color involved too. So ideally, you could even see even children be able to solve this, and also people from other types of, how do I put this? Like not just children, but different. It's not tied to where you're from either. So you could not speak English and you could still be able to solve this puzzle. Whereas an LLM, if you're only trained on English data, you might not be able to figure out Chinese, right? Unless you're trained on Chinese data, right? But with this, it doesn't matter. So the LLMs were quite bad at this, and I think the top person as of a few months ago got up to 40% accuracy on this. And what they did is my understanding is they made a program which just brute forced. It was a program which made programs which brute forced the answer,
God.
and it was super inefficient, and it also cost a lot of money. So now
more than the O3 high compute models?
Probably not. I think it was an individual who was doing it. So I think OpenAI has a little bit more money to throw at this problem. But yeah, so for reference, O1 Mini was getting, I think it's 7 on the ARC prize, so really bad. O1 Preview got 13. Then the O1 model, I think, got 31% on the ARC prize. But OpenAI, they have an O3 model, which is tuned, which got a 76% on the ARC prize. So that's really good. And then they did another one where they just threw a bunch of money at it, and they got the O3 high-tuned model, which got 88% on the ARC prize. But the thing to note is that they spent way more money on the O3 tuned model. So for reference, OpenAI, they spent, well, we actually couldn't try to find the exact dollar amount, but it's over $1,000 that they spent per task on the O3 high tuned model. Whereas the O1 model that got 30%, it cost, I think it was just a few cents per task. Oh.
Yeah, so my understanding of this whole situation, taking a step back, is like, it's not a linear curve with how much money you're spending and what the performance you're getting on these kinds of tests. And just to echo what Mark said about these tests, they're kind of like IQ tests, which are not biased for any language, any culture, any kind of geographical region or perspective that you have. They're just like spatial and visual IQ tests. So there are a lot of models that reached, like, what was it? 30, 20 accuracy in these tests.
And that's without any tuning.
That's without any tuning on these tests.
On these tests, right? Okay. So for example, the one that got 44%, it was tuned specifically for this test.
Okay.
But I think O1, it was just, hey, we're going to see how O1 does on this.
Yeah, somewhere between 20s to 30% accuracy with the O1 model, which is already really good. Then they released the O3 model, and again, this is not like a linear performance comparison with how much money that they're spending and how much what performance level they reach. It's more like a log curve. So you get a lot of the higher you want to go with performance, the exponentially more amount of compute that you have to pour to get that metric. So they have like a log scale. To fit all these models in one window, the amount of money that they're looking at is like, what is it? $10, $100.
Yeah, so we'll put this in front of the camera so you guys could potentially see this. Let's see if that is in the. It's kind of hard to see.
Yeah.
But
So to kind of explain what's happening here in the visual chart, the O3 model spends like $20, I think. The low compute model. It spends $20 to get a 75% accuracy in this IQ test. And to get 10 more percentage points, they had to spend, by my calculation, like $3,500. So 2 orders of magnitude higher to get a 10 more percentage points in this IQ test. So it seems like we're reaching diminishing returns in all of these areas. In the performance of these models, both at like pre-training, because all these companies are spending billions of dollars to get just a few percentage points more performance in the one-shot prompting. And now OpenAI is making the customer spend thousands of dollars instead of a couple dollars at inference time to get a few percentage points more performance.
Yes. So I think that's okay to spend more money depending on the task which you're working on.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think that there are some questions which people would spend a lot of money. So if, for example, let's say not O3 but O5 when it comes out, they said, hey, you pay us more money and we're just gonna go and then train and get a better and better answer to say, all right, fine, here's $1 million to help me solve this rare form of cancer, right? like what should I do? And then maybe it'll think about it and then solve the cancer. Or maybe OpenAI would just take the money and not solve it, which is also highly possible, because if it's a big open problem, it's not even clear that the AI would be able to actually solve it if it thought about it for a while. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't, but it could be something that is there where you say, hey, how much you want to spend, and then we'll think about it for that long.
Yeah, I mean, I think OpenAI so far has been acting in good faith, and I believe that they did offer some of these models, the O1 models, to research people working in biotech, pharma, to help them speed up their research, to work on some of these challenging problems, like you mentioned. And I think eventually, yes, they're going to be a big portion of like this labor force that we have. Instead of people doing a lot of the grunt work, doing a lot of research, doing a lot of thinking, we're going to offload a lot of this to these AI models, which right now I think will be supplementing our intelligence, but eventually, why not surpass it?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a possibility where we will see the AI beating humans at a lot of things. Although I think it really depends on the task, right? Because depending on the criticality of getting it right, I just don't think that even if the AI does do the task correctly, I don't think people will fully trust it. For example, if AI is generating the plans for your airplane, I think that, sure, maybe people would use that as a first draft, but then I think you would have a lot of people going in and trying to check to make sure, hey, is this correct? Where do we go wrong? Because I think that if you're generating something that is, the blueprint for the next rocket ship, where if you're off by just a little bit or make some sort of error and you don't fully understand it, then the whole rocket blows up, everybody dies. You don't want that, right? But I think that if you're doing something that's kind of a little bit more trivial, for example, you said, hey, I'm going to generate maybe like a landing page, or I'm going to generate like a product description, or maybe summarize an article. If you summarize an article and you get 10% wrong, no one's dying there. It's fine. It doesn't matter. So I think that it really depends on the task, which we're going to trust offload the AI. And I think for high critical safety things, we're not going to use an AI for a long time. Maybe to help, maybe to be an extra guiding light, for say, but I think, depending on the task, we may not have AI use it for a long time.
I kind of see what you're saying, but if I can kind of like pinpoint one thing that you mentioned, I don't think AIs in general are bad at precision. I think LLMs have a problem with hallucination, but AIs can be very specific. I mean, these are computational models. So depending on the kind of AI, we can have ML models that are way more specific than any human can possibly be. Like weather prediction, weather modeling. I don't think anyone is like putting their finger out and seeing if it's going to rain and which way the wind is blowing. We have complicated, planet scale modeling systems that know what is going to happen far out in the middle of the ocean, days, if not weeks before it's going to happen, and like predict where the wind is blowing, where the rain is going to fall. So I do agree that hallucinations in particular are a problem with LLMs, and trying to come up with research that has this element of hallucination might be a little bit concerning, but I think we're kind of solving that with fine-tuned models too. We are having models that are citing their sources, that are able to fact check. And as long as we take that into account and think about what kind of model we're using to solve what kind of problem, I don't see why we can't eventually get to a place where we're using AI for very critical things. But yeah, right now, I think the hallucination thing is still a challenge.
Right, and I agree with you. I think that there is a lot of progress into eliminating hallucinations. So for example, maybe you don't want to have an LLM do math, and it says, oh, yeah, I don't know how to do math, but I have this calculator over here, which is really good at math, so let me just, so I could go use the calculator. Also, it could say, oh, I don't know what happened last week. If I say, hey, what happened last week in the news? It might say, I don't know, I wasn't trained on that. Let me Google it. And then it could maybe do a query, check to see what's in the news, summarize that, and return that, right? So, and then it can provide its links, so you can go look it up. So I think that kind of thing is a way to reduce hallucinations, right? But even so, even if you have the ability to do Google searches, check things, it still gets things wrong occasionally, right? Yeah. So one thing that I wanted to check is I wanted to say, I was buying this camera, right? So I bought the DJI Action 5, which we're filming this on, and I used, it was Kagi's model. So Kagi is the Google alternative that I pay for, and they have an assistant where you can use all of the, or not all, but many of the big models, right? So they have Anthropic, they have OpenAI, they have Mistral, they have all these things. I asked it, hey, can you look up to see if the DJI Action 3 battery is compatible with the DJI Action 5? So for reference, I had an Action 3. It broke. We tried to go swimming with it, and it was apparently waterproof, but then I think we didn't put the case on properly, and then we broke that camera, which is really unfortunate. So anyways, we bought the 5, but we
water
had
damage?
Yeah, it was water damage on the Action 3. So, yeah, so if you have the Action, be careful. The cases, they're I don't know, they're not perfect. So anyways, but we bought the Action 5 because it seemed like a decent camera, and I just plan on not swimming with it. So, we'll solve that issue.
I did swim with the Action 4 just last month. My cousin has an Action 4.
Yeah.
I got the Insta360 with like this dive housing and a lot of protection and stuff. But his was just like a naked Action 4, and it worked fine. We were underwater, we were snorkeling, and it looked pretty good.
Yeah, so I think it would work well. But the main problem that I see on some of these action cameras is there's I don't know how to describe it. There's like a little like hatch where you can where it will protect the charging port and the battery, and it's kind of easy to knock those loose. So I think that if you're careful, you could probably make it where none of the water seeps in, but it's not like it's in some sort of watertight case that you put it in. It's just it has insulation within the actual camera itself. So it's got like the O-rings of rubber around a lot of the ports. So I think it's probably okay to swim with it, but I broke one, and now I don't want to do it again.
I think that's a problem with like trying out a new company versus going with like a mature product like the GoPro, which is on their 13th iteration. So they've been doing this a while. They have like the stability down. They have the polish of a product, but DJI is on their 5th iteration. So hopefully this one's better than the last.
I mean, this one seems really well made. It feels waterproof. And also they have another case, which I didn't put on, so I think it'd probably be fine, but I'm just kind of scarred. So I don't want to even try to go swimming with it. I mean, maybe if I get back into scuba diving, that'd be something that I would consider, but I don't know. For now, we'll just do recording this type of thing. There might be some travel content coming up in the future, so I just want to have it for that.
But you used one of these LLMs to do research to compare these products?
Oh yeah. Anyways, getting back to the thing. So I used the LLM. I was using Kagi with the Claude 3.5 Sonnet model, and I asked, hey, is the 3 battery compatible with the 5 battery? And it said, no, it's not compatible. And then I was like, that doesn't make sense. And I said, hey, why don't you compare the 3 and the 5? And it was saying how the 3 was like way better than the 5 in all these ways. And I was thinking, what? This makes no sense. And I think that what actually happened is this reference article was a little bit confusing. So it was kind of getting mixed up on which camera was which. But it actually turns out that the batteries are compatible. But it said it was not compatible. So
what model was it using underneath? What LLM?
It was using the Anthropic model, the Claude 3.5.
Sonnet?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Surprising.
Yeah. So it got it wrong, and I think the reason it got it wrong is because, to be fair, I checked the source data. It was a little bit confusing. So it was one of those listicle sites where they were comparing different cameras together, and I think that it wasn't exactly clear which camera that you were looking at. So I think that the source data was a little bit confusing. So I think a human might have got that messed up too, but it also got it wrong. So it's not infallible.
Yeah, I did something very similar. I was in Australia with my cousins, and they were excited about Boxing Day, which is their equivalent of Black Friday, but it's the day after Christmas. And it's a big shopping holiday, lots of things on sale. And we went to the shop, we were trying to buy a new TV, and the permutations and combinations of TVs are just like insane. There's regular LED TVs, there's QLED TVs, which is Samsung's better version. And then there's OLED TVs, which are supposedly the best, but then you have like mini LED TVs and then like nano LED TVs. And there's a lot of terminology, a lot of specs, a lot of SKUs within the same brand. So I just asked Perplexity, hey, what is a good TV within this budget? And it gave me a couple options, and then I was walking around the store. We finally narrowed down on two options, and we asked, hey, what is the difference between these two? And it was a helpful shopping consultant while we were making this decision. And it was reasonably accurate, I think, because then we got this actual physical human come in and then give us some guidance on our final few picks, and he said the exact same thing that Perplexity told us. These are a decent mid-range TV. There's not that much difference between this line of product. For your use case, this is a good size, this is a good brand, this is a good quality. So I think in that sense, so just for reference, Perplexity is touted as a Google killer. It has search built into it from day one. They came out maybe like 2-something years ago. They were focusing on building a search engine that was LLM powered. They have a pro subscription, which I'm also on, which allows you to do research, which is kind of similar to how the O1, O3 models do a lot of inference time compute. So this model, Google's a bunch of, sorry, Google, it searches a bunch of pages for the query that you're asking it for, reads each of these pages, does its own analysis on top of it, creates like these little cards in a nice visual UI that gives you the references, and then gives the final answer after computing for maybe like dozens of seconds. It's a great research assistant. I like it.
Yeah, it's very good. Although one thing is now Perplexity has ads. So one thing that we were talking about in the past is, hey, how are any of these companies gonna make any money, right? Because it's a complete race to the bottom. We've talked about this before, but everybody seemingly is coming out with a new model every other week that wins on a bunch of benchmarks, and there's a lot of competition, and the price is just getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And I think that in the long run, it's gonna be really hard to make money on an LLM. So there needs to be some other form of business model other than just simply charging to use the model. Because I think right now, OpenAI can get away with it, Anthropic can get away with it. A lot of these companies are getting away with charging $20 a month, but I'm not convinced that going forward, maybe they'll always have the paid plan, but I don't know if a lot of people will continue to pay the $20 a month because a free model will be good enough, right? I think maybe for the people who are really working on complicated problems and they're doing hardcore research, they're gonna be okay paying some extra money. But I think for a lot of people, they're just doing the equivalent of Google search, right? They don't need to have some sort of really fancy model. They could be okay with a model that's a little bit worse, but just answers their question. And I think for that type of thing, it might be similar to a Google search, right? Where you could pay a consultant to go and find the exact right answer for you, but you can also use Google search for free and it works pretty well. So Perplexity, they are now showing ads, which is, I think is okay. I'm not completely sure if it's a good thing, right? Because if you have the ads, can you really trust the information as much? I mean, maybe they're suppressing some information. So for example, a couple days ago, I went to check a few of the different LLMs and I said, hey, give me a list of the best headphones. And I searched on Google, I searched on Perplexity, and I searched on Kagi. And actually, all of them gave me around a similar response, right? So I think that's, in terms of actual responses, I think all of them were pretty good. The difference is Perplexity, and I think also Google, they gave me affiliate links, where a link where I could just go and buy it. Whereas Kagi, it gave me a link to an article where somebody was writing about it. And
Well, just to clarify, you pay for Kagi?
I pay for Kagi.
And these other two services you're using, you don't pay for them?
They were free, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Continue.
That's correct, yes. So yes, I'm paying for Kagi. It gave me ones that seemed completely non-monetized, whereas the Perplexity and Google ones was giving me links where it seemed like they were getting paid somehow, maybe through affiliate links or something. So I think, to be fair, both gave me good results. But the difference is Perplexity was getting paid. So it goes to reason that maybe in the future, if they're showing ads, people may be able to purchase ads on Perplexity and or Google and get their product. Maybe I'm a headphone maker and I want my headphones to the top. Maybe my headphones aren't very good, but it might now be in a sponsored link. So I don't know how they're gonna handle that to say, hey, this is sponsored, this is the ad, this is not sponsored. But I think that's a problem that exists where people may be confused and end up buying the wrong thing.
The crazy part about this is they could interleave the ads in the actual response of the LLM too. So it'll just be a couple words in the middle of a sentence that you're reading that just looks all blended together. You would think that it's like the natural opinion of this LLM that you're trusting, but it is just trying to convince you to buy this product, and you have no idea it's a sponsored ad. Not saying that this would happen, given how strict some of the regulations have gotten, especially in the EU, which is championing a lot of data privacy and customer rights advocacy. So I think ads usually tend to progress this way. They start with like obnoxious big banner ads, then they got a little nicer, then they became like native ads, which started to look like the same content. So even if you're scrolling Instagram, it just looks like another post. It looks like another reel that you're looking at, but it'll say in like a tiny small font that it's sponsored.
It's like hashtag ad in the description or something.
Something, but like very small. So I could see these LLM responses just adding more sentences in the big paragraph that it already gives you, but like a little asterisk that says, oh, this might be like an ad, which will be interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's okay because these companies need to find a way to make money. And it's not clear to me, other than charging for it, how you would make money. And advertising is a pretty established business model, right?
Very lucrative.
It can be, especially if you have a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
I mean, Google makes a good chunk of its money through ads. Everybody's making money through ads, right? And I think that it's okay. Even Netflix started having ads.
Yeah.
Right? Prime Video now has ads. A lot of people are having ads.
Yeah.
So,
somehow OpenAI never took that route, and same thing with Facebook Meta too. Which is surprising given how much advertising they already do on most of their platforms, on Facebook, on Instagram. But they released their Meta Llama models, and they haven't really thought about advertising. They've just given this model out for free. And to your point, yeah, most of the world doesn't care about paying and getting like the best and most advanced model, because they're like my mom and dad, they use the free ChatGPT. My dad just uses the Llama model in WhatsApp because for him it's more about convenience. He doesn't even want to open another app. He's using WhatsApp most of the time, sending our family memes and other pictures of our other little kids in our family, and he just asks the Llama model like, oh, what is this new chip that NVIDIA is doing? Because he got really interested in AI for a little bit. But yeah, most people wouldn't need to pay. And it's going to be interesting to see companies come up with a business model to try to sustain themselves, especially given the scale of some of these things. Like the amount of people who are adopting AI is just like freaking massive. ChatGPT, most successful product of all time, reaching insane user numbers that were unheard of before this. And they've never used ad. They've been well funded by Microsoft for a while. And I think now they're starting to make some money. I think with the O3 model, they've released a new pro subscription, which is $200 a month, an order of magnitude more. It's crazy to see these numbers. Like, you don't see these kinds of numbers in any other software products. Maybe in Adobe's Creative Suite, which is still like less than $100 a month. But this is massive, which kind of makes sense. This is a very professional grade product, which people use to get intelligence. So apart from that, yeah, ads seems like a reasonable approach for the smaller companies that don't have as much VC funding to try to sustain themselves. Who else is making money in this space?
Is anybody making money in AI?
Well, definitely the chip makers, the chip designers, the fabricators, the manufacturers, and all the ancillary technology that goes into that industry. The networking switches, the memory, everything is making money because the amount of data centers that these companies are building is mind-boggling. Elon is pouring billions into a brand new data center. Facebook is buying up land to build data centers. Google is expanding its data centers. Microsoft, Amazon. So definitely the hardware industry is benefiting a lot from this. I also think the cloud service providers are making a healthy amount of money, albeit at low margins but high volume, because everyone who needs to use this needs to use it through some cloud service provider, because if you want to use this at scale, they're the only ones who have the amount of GPUs at scale that are all connected well. It's not just about like buying a GPU. You have to put it into like a server rack, and you have to connect that rack with a bunch of other racks to train, to do inference, to scale and serve millions, if not billions of users. So all of these cloud service providers, I think their revenues have gone up. Obviously, NVIDIA has gone up to the moon. But OpenAI itself, I think maybe OpenAI is also making money because...
Are they making? I thought OpenAI was losing a ton of money. That's why they need to keep on raising money.
I think they need more money to train the next generation of models at the scale that they're growing. Yes.
So they need more and more money to train it. So in a certain sense, sure, they're getting maybe more top line revenue, but they're losing a bunch of money because they just need more and more money in order to train the next big thing. And also, I think that it's pretty easy to understand that. So if you're an investor, you say, hey, if you give me more money, I can give you a better model. But I think that it's very possible that we may see the opposite be true, where some companies are going to be there and then they're going to be a little bit more scrappy and a little bit more thoughtful about how they use the money. So actually, I wanted to talk about this new DeepSeek model that came out. So DeepSeek is a company, I believe they're out of China, that created a model, and they created the DeepSeek V3 model, which is a mixture of experts model. It's I have it pulled up somewhere, but it's 600 something billion parameters, and they apparently trained it for about $6 million, which is in contrast to the hundreds of millions of dollars that OpenAI is using to train a GPT-4. But this is a GPT-4 class, very good. It competes with the best of the models, and we tried it out. It's available online, and it seems like it's giving very good responses. So I don't know. This type of thing.
What's new about this one?
Well, I think that the most interesting thing about it is just how little it cost to make, right? So it was only $6 million to train their top of the line model, and it competes with all the big boys. And I'm trying to see, there was some benchmarks here. They compared DeepSeek to Qwen 2.5. Qwen is, I forget who makes that one. Alibaba, yeah. And they had the Llama 4.5B model, Claude 3.5, and GPT-4o. And it seemed like DeepSeek was winning a handful of benchmarks. So it seems like it's at the same level as a lot of these ones, but it's at an order of magnitude less, or maybe multiple orders of magnitude less to actually train the model. So it's very exciting. So I think that it's not enough. I mean, maybe a company like DeepSeek might actually be the one who's actually ends up being more profitable, because if you make a model that is training for $6 million and it's the same, then you could charge even less to use it, and then maybe you could give OpenAI a run for its money.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Because I do feel like this is a winner takes all kind of market. Because why would you use a worse model if there's a better model available to you? So,
There might be lots of reasons why you'd use the worst model as a better model available to you.
given everything else is equal.
I mean, it's never equal, right? So, I mean, there'd be a ton of reasons why you would be fine using a worse model. One, maybe you're using a different cloud compute service, right? So maybe you're using Amazon, maybe you're using Google Cloud, and then maybe it's really easy for the integration to use Google's Gemini model, or maybe you could use Bedrock and you could use all the models that are there, right? So I think that'd be one reason why you'd want to use it. Also, some of these models are open source, and you have lawyers at your company, you can't send the data over, right? So you'd have to maybe use an open source one and run it locally. So it's worse, but legal allows it, therefore you use it, right? So I think there's plenty of reasons why you'd use a worse model just because a better one's available for you. And there's, I think, room for multiple people to have models that can be, I mean, there's room for multiple people to make money at this.
Yeah, sure. I do agree with the platform lock-in part of it, because like if someone's whole company is using AWS or Google, for example, or Azure, they'll probably continue using their products and services or whatever models they offer, which is the lowest friction to integrate, because it's a lot of overhead for companies to integrate with these kinds of solutions. I think the thing that these llama models have proved is that, yes, you can make a really good model with a smaller parameter, which is cheaper to do inference on, but they used a lot of compute to train that model. Because we talked about diminishing returns, but that doesn't mean there's no returns. They train these models for a long, long time using a lot of data, a lot of compute to just eke out that last few little bits of percentage points of performance. So I think users are probably going to end up using whatever model at whatever tier, but that model will be trained with the most amount of data, with the most amount of compute.
Yeah, assuming that the inference costs are relatively low, right? Because
yeah, for each class of model, whatever their decision is, if they want to have a certain price point that they're trying to meet, for all of those class of models, like the 70B, let's say, or like even smaller, the 13B, if you compare those kinds of models, the models that have been trained on the highest quality data, the most amount of compute, the most amount of time spent training, they usually perform better.
Sure, yeah, that's true. That's true.
So I would be surprised if there was some company out there that is spending less to make a better model. That would be very, very surprising.
That'd be cool, though. I mean, it's possible with software. You can do a lot with software. The algorithmic improvement.
No, I think algorithmic improvements are dead in this new world of AI.
You think so?
I think it's just data. Data and compute, and maybe like model architecture, but I feel like we have kind of saturated in terms of model architecture, unless there's like a new point in the S-curve where we discover something new, and then everyone else is gonna run behind that new kind of model too.
Yeah, well, I mean, sure, but I don't know. I don't think algorithmic improvements are dead. I think that there are a lot of people right now who are just copying some of the paper. Everybody's copying everybody else. They're copying the transformer paper, whatever. And I think that there are going to be algorithm improvements that will probably make orders of magnitude improvements to what we have right now. And maybe even the AI will help us make those algorithmic improvements as well. But I don't know. Maybe you think algorithmic improvements are dead. It's all about the data.
Yeah.
I don't have a strong argument to say why that's not correct.
Yeah.
But just my hunch is that like humans are smart. Humans working with AIs are smart. They are super creative, and there's a lot of mind share being put on this. And also, people just don't have enough money to throw more money at the money is limited, right? Energy is limited, right? There is gonna be some sort of, and even data is limited, right? There's gonna be a wall, right? Sure, hypothetically, if I spent $1 trillion, I could make a model that's way better, right? Maybe be 20% better. I don't know.
That'd be a big jump.
It would be a big jump, right? But also, who's got $1 trillion? I mean, like the market cap of a lot of these companies is not $1 trillion. Nobody can spend $1 trillion at this point. Maybe governments could, but
I think Nvidia could $1 trillion.
I mean, I don't think they would though.
No, they wouldn't.
Right? It's just too much money, right? And I think that at a certain point, if you tell investors,
Actually, maybe Elon would.
maybe he might be crazy enough to do it.
He might be crazy enough to do it.
Right? But I think that at a certain point, the investors are going to say, hey, look, like, I need a return on this money, right? If I spent $1 trillion and it's not going to give me, I mean, if I spend $1 trillion, I want at least like a 10x return, probably. I want like a 1 trillion to 10 trillion, or maybe if you have because I mean, that's also a lot of money that you could be spending on something else, right? I mean, typically VCs, they want to see like a decent return. If you're going to put that much money into something, you want to see like a pretty juicy return. But it's not clear to me if you're going to be able to do it. And also, like, even if the model was better, like, the whole world economy, I think, is around $100 trillion. So that would mean you'd have to spend around like 1% of the entire world economy to the whole entire world GDP to train one of these models. I'm not buying it. Like, because even if you could come up with that money, the world wouldn't have enough money to even spend to give you a rate of return on that.
What was that absurd number that Sam Altman was seeking to start his new chip fabrication or design
it was trillions
company?
of dollars.
Like 7 trillion?
Yeah.
To make a new chip company?
There's no way. So anyways, I have a theory about all this, which Shashank and I were kind of debating this before that. But I think that, and I've said this before, but I think that the AI market is completely overvalued, and this will cause there to be potentially a big recession in the United States, and I think that even the U.S. stock market is going to go down. So I think that, in my opinion, the S&P 500 will not continue to have its big returns that it has been having. Now, maybe it will in the short term. I don't know. It's hard to say what the market will do in the next year or two, but I personally think that we are similar to the dot-com bubble right now, where we are going to get a big stock market correction. So hear me out. Let me make the argument.
Hashtag not financial advice.
Yes. So in the S&P 500, there's 500-ish companies. I think it's slightly more than 500 companies due to reasons for the index. In the S&P 500, around 50% of the gains of the S&P 500, and just to take a step back, for those who don't know the S&P 500, the S&P 500 is the 500 largest companies in the United States. It's an index. A lot of people use it as a benchmark. So if you're going to invest in the market, a lot of people are talking about the S&P 500. So it's the Standard & Poor's 500. It's their 500 companies. Okay, so that is what a lot of people do. On average, typically it'll do about 7% rate of return-ish compounded every year. So a lot of people will use this for retirement planning and whatnot. They'll put money into it, and then they'll have the money go up 7%. So when I say 7% compounded, so if I put $100 into the S&P 500, after 1 year, on average, it might be $107, but then now maybe you're going to get 7% rate of return on 107, right? So you have compounded interest. It's wonderful. But anyways, and I think Shashank just looked up, the average annual return on the S&P 500 was 10.13% since 1957.
Or 6.3 if you adjust for inflation.
Yeah. So anyways, it goes up every now and then. But currently, of those 500 companies, 30-ish, plus or minus a little bit, is coming from 7 companies. Those companies, they deem the Magnificent Seven. Those are Alphabet, which is Google, Amazon, Apple, Meta, and/or Facebook, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Tesla. Now, all of those companies, every single one, are making a lot. I think investors are very optimistic about those companies because they are associated with AI, right? Everybody knows Google. They're making tons of AI models. They're making the Gemini models. They're making VO. They're putting AI results in your search, right? Amazon, we have Bedrock. We have the new Nova models. We have the video generation models. There's a lot of things that Amazon is creating for AI. Apple, all the Siri stuff, right? And Apple's making deals with OpenAI, Facebook making all the Llama models, Microsoft, I mean, they're funding OpenAI. Also, Amazon is funding Anthropic. And then Microsoft is also coming out with its own AI models. NVIDIA, I think they make their own AI models, but they're also supplying the hardware to all the AI models. And then Tesla is also giving NVIDIA tons of money. So in a certain sense, all these companies, they're making a ton of money, but also if you sort of think about it, like, a lot of the money that they're getting is kind of money that they're just trading back and forth between each other, right? So, for example, Tesla, when they made their data center, or I think that may have been a separate company, but they gave NVIDIA a bunch of money. Everybody's giving NVIDIA lots of these things. And so in a certain sense, they're all kind of in this sort of weird circular economy where there's trading back and forth money to make AI chips. And none of them are actually making the money on AI itself. Sure, maybe they will, but I think right now they're spending a lot more money just training the models, and they're not actually seeing the actual rate of return. And Facebook is out there just putting the marginal, like, they're making these models, just putting it out for free, right? So anyways, Magnificent Seven, 35% of the US stock market. And I think it could be said that there is a little bit of hype in the AI space, right? So I think that once investors see that, like, hey, I'm not getting my rate of return, everybody's thinking, hey, the stock market will go and how to put this? So everybody's thinking that, hey, with all these AI models, we're going to replace all of our developers, we're going to replace all the customer support, we're going to bring in an age of abundance, and therefore all these companies will make a bunch of money from it. Maybe, but I also think what equally, if not more likely, is that the hype wasn't lived up to. The companies will need more and more money to train the models. They're going to be losing a bunch of money in real terms because they're training the models, and then the profit won't be there. The investors will get spooked, and then the money will dry up. They're going to stop seeing AI as some sort of panacea. We could be in another AI winter. Then the market cap of all those companies might crash dramatically. So they might go from 35%, and it might shrink down to 10%. So it could be that Apple, Tesla, NVIDIA, all of these companies, they dip 50-ish. I don't know. I'm just pulling a number out, not financial advice, but they might drop a lot once investors get scared and they don't believe AI is living to the hype. And because they are so high compared to the rest of the market, they're going to bring down the rest of the market because people are just going to be scared. Because when the S&P 500 goes down, people are going to say, oh no, I lost 20%, and they're going to start selling, and then the whole market is going to crash. And I think that, I just personally think that all the US stocks right now are just completely overvalued. So the US, I was looking at this, it makes up about, the US GDP makes up about, in the stock market, sorry, I shouldn't say the US GDP, but the US stock market is around 60% of the world's financial assets-ish. Plus or minus a little bit, but it's up there, right? But the actual GDP of the US economy is only about 20% of the world's GDP. So that means that of the entire economic activity in the world, 80% is outside of the US, but 60% of the economic value is inside the United States. So I think that it's gonna revert to the mean, and we're gonna see that, the US economy could shrink to a third of what it is today. So I am really quite convinced that the S&P 500, the US stock market, is completely overpriced. So me personally, not financial advice, I've been selling a lot of my US stocks. I still have some, But yeah, the percentage is a lot lower now. I've been locking in those gains, and I've been diversifying into other assets outside of the United States, which I think are more appropriately valued. So, anyways, that's my thesis. Not financial advice. Don't listen to me. I'm just a guy sitting here. But
So to give you folks just another guy's opinion, also sitting on a couch next to Mark, I have probably like a complete opposite opinion of what you do, because I see what you're saying. You said a lot of things. So working backwards, you mentioned how the U.S. stock market is a massive percentage of the entire global public market. That's just because I think the U.S. has a big culture of taking companies and going public in this capitalist economy and having people take part in the wealth creation of companies. I think that's been a popular culture for a long time. Companies going public here, not just recently. But I think in the last few years, with like the whole SPAC boom, where a lot of companies were going public a lot easier by reverse merging with other companies, and even now with these AI companies needing to raise massive amounts of capital that they can't or don't want to do in private markets, I think we're just seeing a lot of companies go public in the US. The US also has probably the highest concentration of tech companies, apart from maybe China, which is now catching up with both software companies and also recently hardware companies. I do think the US has a lot of public stocks contributing to this value. That doesn't mean like it's overinflated or overhyped or overvalued than other economic value that's out there. It's just like a lot of economic value outside in other countries isn't in public markets. A lot of oil companies in the Middle East, private sovereign wealth funds, a lot of companies or a lot of economic value in China is held by the government, and a lot of public companies there. And there are a lot of small to mid-sized companies in a lot of other parts of the world. And same thing in India. There's a lot of wealth that is within the country. A lot of billionaires who've made their wealth that is not in public companies. A lot, not to mention a lot of corruption. But so that is one part of the equation. The other part you mentioned is how a lot of these companies are overvalued, and
they make up such a high percentage of the market.
I think they have high valuations, which is why they make up a big portion of the S&P 500 today, because they have risen to that amount by riding this AI growth. And I think a lot of it is justified. A lot of consumers are using AI to solve whatever needs that they have. Sadly, a lot of them are also using it to replace human roles, or tasks that humans did are being automated by AI, so they have to hire less humans overall. Or hopefully, this is the optimist, maybe they're empowering their customers or their employees to do more with AI. And instead of doing X amount of output, they're getting 2x the output with the same amount of people. So I think unlike the dot-com boom, where there was a lot of hype with the internet, where people were thinking that we're just going to create value out of this online proliferation of companies, I think people are getting a lot of value here today. And the PE ratios are sensible for most of these companies. Most of the...
So by the way, for those that aren't familiar with stock, PE ratio is the price to earnings ratio. So it's basically the price of the company versus like divided by how much money they make.
Yeah, so it's a good indicator of the level of enthusiasm that is in a company, contrasted with how much money they're actually making and how much value they might actually have. So naturally, high growth companies are going to have high PE ratios because they keep growing.
So the price of the company is worth some multiple of what they actually are getting. So for reference, if you had a PE ratio of 1, that would mean that the price is exactly equal to the earnings. So that would be a really cheap company, right? And then if they're not earning anything, I think the PE ratio is actually undefined if the profit is negative, right?
Correct.
Because it's like you're dividing like a positive number over like a negative number. It doesn't exactly make sense. But if you have, but then the higher the PE ratio, that means kind of the more expensive a company is. So if you have a PE ratio of 100, then that'd be a very expensive company.
That were streaming and serving these services online, Zoom, etc. And I think that was like peak Amazon PE ratio, or actually Mark is looking it
Yeah,
up
I'm
right
looking
now.
it up. It looks like in 2023, the PE ratio of Amazon was 245.
Yikes.
But actually in 2013, I see that the PE ratio was over 1,000. And actually, a lot of
Crazy
times,
numbers.
the PE ratio was undefined because Amazon was losing money back in the
Yeah.
early 2012, 2015. They were losing money, but
Yeah, to be fair, Amazon also does a lot of
like
fancy
reinvestment.
book work and reinvestment to not show a lot of profits.
I mean, look, I don't want to accuse Amazon or anything. I work for Amazon.
No,
Yeah,
not in that sense.
but
No, they just reinvest a lot of the money that they're already making, so they don't show a profit.
yeah, they're just putting the money back into the company. So sometimes you spend more money than you make.
But for contrast, I think a lot of the tech companies have PE ratios of like in the 30s, which is what it is right now. The only outliers are like Tesla and Nvidia. Nvidia is a little bit high. Tesla, I think, it's substantially high because of Elon. You know, it's hard to put an objective number on a person like Elon, and with him backing Trump after getting elected in this new election, and who knows, maybe that absurd valuation is warranted. But I think that is a little tangential to this AI race. Not entirely, because Elon is spending a lot of money on data centers in Minnesota, I believe, for XAI to fund their new wave of models. So yes, people are pouring a lot of money into it, but I think there's a lot of consumer demand. And given how awesome we both think the O3 models are, I think inference time compute is going to go up. The models have kind of saturated in their performance, but like increasing just a little bit every year. Now the amount of money that people are going to be spending as a consumer is going up to try to get more out of the same models.
I mean, I get what you're saying. I just think that we can't necessarily say that just because there's increased consumer demand means that the companies are automatically going to make more money, right? Because the consumer may prefer to have a better model, and they may even use it more. But unless there's some sort of actual transaction where a consumer is giving a company money to use the model or use a service that was created for the model, then the companies don't actually make money from that. And if they're needing to just spend more and more money to compete, it's going to be really hard for them to actually make money at this. And I agree. I think AI is going to eat the world, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the companies are going to make a big profit from it. I mean, yeah.
I see what you're saying. I think the consumer side of it is a little murky. Like, how are these companies floating the bill for all the free AI models that they're releasing to customers? I don't know. Maybe
Well, they're just making up for it with other parts of the business, right? So
maybe it works out. Like maybe their pro subscription or plus subscription for ChatGPT offsets the cost. Maybe, you know, Google's ads revenue makes up for the cost of the Gemini models, and same thing with Amazon or Meta. Maybe their advertising revenue makes up for them giving the Llama models out for free. But the number of B2B customers that these companies have is, I'm sure, massive, where they are making a lot of money in the enterprise space by selling Google Cloud or AWS or Azure to a lot of companies who are using these models. And looking at the trends, the amount of GPUs that are being deployed in these cloud service providers are massive. Like not just for AI, but for all kinds of optimizations. Like the concept of specialized I forget, whatever the term NVIDIA uses to define specialized computing, where they build chips to optimize a specific use case for like video processing. There's tons and tons of video out there. So more companies using AI, even in Excel, companies using AI models to do some kind of calculations to then plug it into Excel, I think uses a lot of GPUs, and that amount of usage is going up. So the hardware companies, the cloud service provider, and the model makers, they're all making a lot of money.
Yes, maybe. Yeah, I think, sure. NVIDIA is making a lot of money,
Yes.
right? I think there's no
And
doubt
cloud
about
service
it.
providers,
Yes, also.
which make up a big part of the Magnificent Seven.
Right. Although I think the problem is that a lot of the cloud providers are just supplying there's a wrapper around the GPU, right? So people are using it to train the model. But I think at the end of the day, people will stop buying so much hardware if the money just isn't in it to train the models, right? So I could see that we may see a lot of these startups that are training models, that money will dry up, right? So sure, maybe Amazon, maybe Google, maybe OpenAI, maybe they'll have enough money that they can continue throwing more money at this problem. But a lot of the other people who are spending money on training custom models, I think they won't. And a lot of that money from their even business consumers can dry up, because if they don't find that they're making, like, and when I say they, I mean the start whatnot who are AI companies. I think that if they don't find that they're making a big profit, I mean, they're just going to go out of business. And right now they're living off of investor hype, but I don't think that will continue to be true. And I think there may be a few winners, but I don't think that the investors who are putting trillions of dollars or billions of dollars into this are going to see the rate of return that they think they're going to get, because I think that it's just overhyped.
I see your concern there, and I think some of that may be warranted. I do think there's a lot of investor hype and just market hype in general. Everyone's starting a company, everyone's raising money to make their own model. But that's not to say that people aren't creating value. And I think there's a lot of businesses that are creating more value, optimizing their customer service flows, their marketing flows, replacing a lot of knowledge work with AI, and becoming more profitable by, I guess, getting more work out of AI and hiring less people too.
Right. So then that also kind of leads into the thing, if they're hiring less people, then potentially in the future, less people have jobs and they'll have less money to spend at these companies, and then the price will have to go down. And then that also makes it so that, sure, they're more efficient. Everybody's potentially better off, maybe sort of, but then they won't have the jobs to spend on the models, and then the market goes down. I don't know. I just think in all ways that I think about it, the market just seems overvalued to me. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But I don't know. I get what you're saying. I think that I completely agree. I am a complete AI enthusiast, and I think AI is going to change the world. I really do. I think that it's going to bring so much value and potentially an age of abundance. But in order to have an age of abundance, that almost implies that the price of the things will go down over time.
So
right?
here's my speculation. I think this is going to be the biggest year of AI. I think it's going to go up way more than it has in the past because of just the two news articles that we talked about. Video generation models are finally here, and they're pretty decent. And inference time compute, using agentic behavior to run these models like O1, O3, Gemini 2.0 Flash, it's going to be using a lot of compute, an order of magnitude of more compute to create more insights. And I think that's just going to drive this industry forward.
I mean, that is an argument, right?
Massive growth.
So I know I sounded a little bit bearish here, right? But the bull case is, yes, will be the new thing. All these companies will need to spend way more money on AI to take advantage of the agents and the tool calling all the things, and the company, and then they're going to have so much productivity, and they're going to make so much money through new markets, new selling, just growing the pie for everybody, and everyone makes a lot of money. I hope that's what happens, right? I think that could be true, but I think that the market's already kind of pricing that in.
I don't think the market understands exponential growth. I think maybe they're thinking about linear growth, but this is just unprecedented. There might be like a pullback, that it might be a little bit overvalued for the current value that they're providing, but I don't think there'll be a significant correction in 2025.
All right. I mean, I don't know about 2025. It could continue to go up.
Yeah.
My prediction is not for next year.
Sure.
I don't know.
Sure.
But I think my prediction is for, let's say, the next 10 years. I think that the S&P 500,
long time horizon.
I think in the next 10 years, the S&P 500 will underperform the rest of the world. That's my prediction.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Dude, I think I think in the next 10 years we might reach AGI and like Nvidia might take over the planet.
That's also possible. That is also possible.
Yeah.
And then, what does that mean? So, what should the listeners do? How should they invest their money? Just put it all in Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, I don't know if that's the right answer. I was having a conversation with a friend about this, and I don't know. It's hard to focus on specific strategies or solutions to this fast, ever-changing world. I think you just need to stay adaptable. I think you need to try to make use of whatever comes, because every few weeks it's something new. Try to figure out how to incorporate that, create value, upskill yourself, learn to use these tools, and go with technology as opposed to try to fight it.
Yes, I agree. I think that is incredibly well said. Because honestly, no matter what the stock market does, you can adapt, right? You can go learn the next new technology, whatever that is, right? Maybe you're going to be learning how to develop agents. Maybe you're going to be using, learn how to do sales, whatever. But no matter what, your ability to adapt and grow and learn is going to far surpass whatever the S&P 500 does, right? I mean, sure, if the S&P 500 got a 10% rate of return, wonderful, right? If you have $1 million to invest, that's 100 grand. Whoopee, you made 100 grand. That's fantastic, right? But if you learned how to program or how to do AI development and you got a job for 300K, that was significantly better than the S&P 500. And those returns in the S&P 500 aren't guaranteed, right? They could go up, they could go down, sideways, who knows? But if you are an adaptable person, you will be able to succeed no matter what you do. So that's it. I think that's actually a good way to end it.
Yeah, it's a good note to end on.
Yeah, so whoever's listening, I believe that you can succeed. Personally, you. But what you're doing, if you're listening to this podcast, you are a person who is curious about the world and you like to see technology grow. And I think you're the type of person who will be able to adapt. It's the person who isn't adapting to the world that's going to fail and be left behind. But I don't think you will. So I believe in you, and I think that you'll do great. Anyways, that's all. So thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you in the next one.
See you next time.